What drew me to the early childhood profession was really my experiences working with children. I began my career as a certified occupational therapy assistant, and a large part of my experience has been working with children in pediatric settings. Through that work, I became more interested in not only the specific skills I was addressing with the child, but also the larger picture of their development, their environment, their family, and the people involved in supporting them. Working with children with different developmental needs also showed me how important the early years are. Small skills that we work on during childhood had a much bigger impact on a child's ability to participate, communicate, become more independent, and engage with others. That made me want to understand child development from a broader perspective rather than looking at development only from the occupational therapy or behavioral perspective. That is one of the reasons I decided to pursue my bachelor's degree in early childhood studies. My education has helped me understand how different areas of development are connected and how important it is to consider the whole child. It has also strengthened my understanding of family engagement, inclusion, professional collaboration, and advocacy. I think my experiences as both a CODA and RBT has given me a perspective that I can bring into early childhood field because I've had the opportunity to work directly with children and families and alongside other professionals. Those experiences have taught me that the early childhood professionals have a responsibility to keep learning and to use what they have learned to improve their practice. Ultimately, what continues to draw me to the field is the opportunity to support children during such an important period of development and to be part of a team that helps children and families have access to the support and opportunities that they need. That connects strongly to the NAEYC Standard 6 because professionalism involves continuing to learn, reflecting on practice, collaborating with others, and advocating for children and families. I think one of my chief responsibilities as an early childhood professional is to support the whole child and to recognize that every child develops differently. Children come into early childhood settings with different strengths, needs, experiences, cultures, family backgrounds. So I don't think there is one approach that works for every child. My responsibility is to learn about the child, observe their development and participation, and use that information to support um, that is appropriate for their individual needs. In my work as a CODA and as an RBT, I've learned the importance of using individualized strategies, breaking skills into manageable steps when needed, and providing appropriate prompts and using positive reinforcement and other strategies that help children participate and develop new skills. I also think it's important to look at what the child can do and build from those strengths rather than focusing on only areas of difficulties. Another important responsibility is working with families and other professionals. I don't believe that an early childhood professional can effectively support a child by working alone. I don't believe that families have important knowledge of other children, and professionals such as teachers, occupational therapists, speech language pathologists, behavioral professionals, and other providers may each contribute a different perspective. When we communicate and share information appropriately, we can develop more consistent strategies and better support the child's development. I also believe that advocacy is part of my responsibility. Sometimes children and families face barriers that make it more difficult to have access to services or participate fully in early childhood environments. As a professional, I have a responsibility to recognize those barriers, communicate concerns appropriately, and help connect families with resources when possible. Finally, I think being responsible for young children means being responsible for my own personal growth. I need to continue learning, reflect on my practice, stay informed about current research and professional standards, and be willing to change my approach when something isn't working. To me, being an effective early childhood professional means putting the child's development and well-being first, while working respectfully with families and other professionals to create the best possible opportunities for that child. I believe collaboration is one of the most important parts of early childhood practice because children are supported by many different people, and each person may see something different about the child's development and needs. No single professional has all the information or expertise needed to support every area of a child's development. In my own experience as an occupational therapist and RBT, I have worked with children alongside families, teachers, therapists, behavioral professionals, and other members of the child support team. Each professional may have a different area of expertise, but the goal should be the same to support the child's development and participation. Collaboration with families is especially important to me. Families spend much more time with their children than professionals do, so they have more information about the child's routines, strengths, communication preferences, and needs that professionals may not see during a therapy session or a classroom activity. I think families should be treated as partners rather than simply receiving recommendations from professionals. I try to listen to their concerns, explain strategies in a way that is understandable, and consider their priorities when planning support. Collaboration with professionals is also important because it helps create consistency across environments. For example, if a child is working on communication, fine motor skills, self-care, behavioral skills, the professional supporting the child can communicate about strategies and progress so that the child has opportunities to practice those in different settings. When appropriate, sharing observations and discussing strategies can also help professionals recognize when an approach needs to be adjusted. I also think effective collaboration requires respect and communication. Professionals may not always have the same perspective, and that's okay. Instead of assuming that one person's approach is the only correct one, I think we should listen to each other, consider the information available, and focus on what's best for the child and the family. To me, collaboration is also connected to professional growth. Working with other professionals gives me opportunities to learn from people with different training and experiences, while also allows me to contribute what I have learned through occupational therapy, behavioral services, and my early childhood education studies. Ultimately, effective collaboration creates stronger support system around the child. When families and professionals communicate, respect another's knowledge, and work towards shared goals, children have a better opportunity to receive consistent and individualized support. One of the main ways that I reflect on my growth is by looking at my own practice and asking myself what worked, what didn't work, and what I could have done differently. Because I work with children who have different developmental and behavioral needs, I know that I can't assume that the same strategy will work for every child. I try to pay attention to the child's response and use that information to determine whether I need to adjust my approach. Another strategy I use is learning from other professionals. Working as a CODA and RBT has given me opportunities to work alongside other professionals and learn from their perspectives. I try to listen to feedback and consider suggestions rather than assume that my first approach is always the best one. I think being open to feedback is an important part of professional growth. I also use continuing education and my coursework as opportunities to reflect on my practice. Completing my bachelor's degree in early childhood studies has exposed me to information about development, inclusion, family engagement, advocacy, and professional practice that had caused me to think differently about some of my previous experiences. When I learn something new, I try to think about how it connects to the children and families I work with and whether it could improve my practice. Another strategy is reviewing documentation and progress over time. Documentation helps me look beyond one individual interaction and see patterns in a child's participation and progress. It also helps me think about whether the strategies being used are supporting the goals that we're working towards. I also think reflection means being honest about areas where I still need to grow. I don't expect myself to know everything just because I have professional experience. The early childhood field continues to change, and children and families have different needs. I want to remain open to learning, asking questions, and improving my skills. Going forward, I plan to continue using feedback from my colleagues, professional development, research-based resources, and self-reflection to evaluate my practice. For me, professional growth is an ongoing process rather than something that ends when I finish my degree. One issue that I could see becoming a focus of my current or future advocacy efforts is access to early childhood intervention and support services. Through my professional experiences, I have seen how important early support can be for children with developmental needs. But I have also become more aware that families can experience barriers when trying to access services. These barriers can include limited availability of providers, wait lists, difficulties navigating different systems, and challenges coordinating services between families, schools, and outside professionals. When access to appropriate support is delayed, it can create additional challenges for children and their families during important periods of development. I think advocacy in this area could involve listening to families, helping them understand available resources, communicating concerns appropriately, and supporting collaboration among the professionals involved in a child's care and education. I also think it is important for professionals to understand that families have different needs and circumstances, so advocacy should begin with listening rather than assuming that we already know what the family needs. I believe advocacy is a hallmark of professionalism because early childhood professionals have a responsibility to do more than simply perform their assigned duties. We have a responsibility to recognize barriers that may affect children and families and to use our knowledge and professional voice to help address those barriers. Advocacy also connects to the NAEYC Standard 6 because professionalism includes understanding our responsibilities to children, families, colleagues, and the profession. It also involves continuing to learn, working collaboratively, and participating in efforts that support positive outcomes for children and families. My own view of advocacy has also changed as I have progressed through the Early Childhood Services program. Early in my career, I mainly thought of advocacy as speaking up for an individual child when that child needed additional support. Now I see advocacy as something broader. It can involve individual children and families, but it can also involve identifying patterns or variants within systems and working with others to find ways to improve them. Ultimately, I want advocacy efforts to help create early childhood environments where children have meaningful opportunities to participate and families have access to information, resources, and the support that they need. Thank you so much for your time and for the opportunity to meet with you today.